Hi guys, Tracy here with a Gelli Plate process video. This is a companion video for my Let's Go scrapbooking process video. And basically, as I got started with that project, and then I decided that I wanted to make my own patterned paper with my Gelli Plate, and then cut some leaf shapes out of it. So it was kind of a bit of an excuse to just use my new Gelli Plate. I have this big mama of a Gelli Plate. It is 12 by 14 inches, and I got this specifically so that I could do some 12 by 12 pattern papers with my Gelli Plate. Also, just yesterday, my deli paper arrived. I've been wanting to try deli paper for quite some time, and since I've been pulling out my Gelli Plate a little bit more often, I usually use my 8 by 10 Gelli Plate. I decided to go ahead and finally buy some Gelli Plate or some deli paper, which is actually very difficult to find. I was inspired by Julie Balzer, who does a lot of Gelli plating and uses a lot of deli paper, and so I decided to give it a try. It's hard to find in Canada, deli paper that is, but I found some on eBay for a reasonable price. I mean, you can find it on Amazon, but it's like $80 for a package, which is crazy. So anyhow, you just saw me going through my stencils there while I talked to you guys, and I grabbed I have a 4-inch brayer, which I wasn't sure if that would be too small for such a ginormous Gelli Plate. I'm putting some white, some red, and some yellow. I'm just using Basics Liquitex ink, and I'm basically wanting to just get a base, kind of like a base coat of color down on a bunch of pieces of deli paper. The reason I'm using deli paper for this project is I thought it would be a similar consistency to what real leaves would be like when they fall from the trees. So this is just the base coat, so I just want it to not be transparent. That's my only goal here. So these colors are a little fall-like. I mean, they're not quite, but they, the red and the yellow are in there for sure. It's causing a bit of a peachy look in some places, but by the time I layer lots of different prints on top of these ones, it will look much more fall-like. So I'm just I had a lot of extra, I used way too much paint. It was hard to say how much I needed because I've never used a plate this size before. So I had a lot of extra paint on my roller, so I just rolled it out and took another print there. And I always keep to my left-hand side, and I think I got this from Julie Balzer, or I can't remember who, but it might be from Julie. Anyways, who has a workflow where they keep their fresh papers over to their left, and then they roll their kind of like their scrap piece of paper over to the left, and then they put all of their finished prints over to the left as well. I don't have much space to put my finished prints over to the left because all of my scrapbooking supplies are over there, so I'm just bringing them and laying them in various places all around my room. So that one obviously didn't pick up very much paint, but that's okay. You can use any kind of acrylic paint. You can use other paints too, but I find acrylic paints is really the best. Watercolor doesn't work so great because it tends to bead up on watercolor. I have had some success using the Liquitex inks. They do dry quite fast on a Gelli Plate, so you have to work fast, but they work, and they're beautiful because they're so vivid. So when you work with a stencil, you just put some paint down, and then you put the stencil down, and then you pull a print that will give you, I guess, like the insides of the shape of that stencil. And then you can pull the stencil off and take another print with what's left behind. And that gives you a bit of a tone on tone type of look. So I'll show you that one in just a second. See how that looks? And sometimes you can get 3 prints from one batch of paint, and sometimes you can't. So oh, I didn't pick anything up with that. I was trying to just get that paint off of the stencil, but it dried too fast. So I'm just taking a lighter shade of green here and some turquoise. I just smeared it on with my hands because it was not going where I wanted it to go. And now this is a much darker green, and I'm thinking, oh, this doesn't look very fall-like, but I'll see what I can do with it. So I'm putting this one on one of the pieces of deli paper that didn't have very much on it. And I'm sorry. I meant to actually show you the prints before I added the layers, but I keep forgetting to do that. So I'm sorry about that. I try to remember to show you each print as I make it. And now see how there's that extra bit of paint with the arrows on it? You can sometimes see you can get a little bit more off of that. So that was a good example. I think I got 3 off of that. So now because I was using such a dark and green color, I decided to use a baby wipe to clean off most of the Gelli plate. You don't really have to clean it in between, but I just wanted to get rid of the green for now. And it cleans up really easily just with a baby wipe, and you just want to make sure that you get all of the little lint that's left behind from a baby wipe, just get it all off of your plate, because otherwise those little pieces of lint will wind up on your prints, which doesn't actually look all that bad, but anyhow, I like to get rid of it if I can. Now I'm just blotting off the extra green paint off of my roller, and you can see that there is still some green paint on my roller and it's coming off on my print, but that's okay. I think that gives a nice mottled fall look. And so this time the Gelli plate is really heavily loaded with red on one side and then red and yellow on the other side. And I'm just going to pull off some of that paint with my bubble wrap, and then I took a print from the bubble wrap. And now I'm going to take a print from my Gelli plate. And that's what that looks like. I really love how that one turns out, actually. And now I'm just going to put that on half of this one. And trying to get one more. That didn't really get very much, but that's okay. And I actually really love this vignetted look. See how the Gelli plate is clean in the middle, or cleanish, and then it has that kind of frame all the way around it. That gave me an idea for something that I'd like to do with a scrapbooking page. I think I'd like to kind of build a vignette like that and pull a print onto a piece of 12 by 12 paper. So these pieces of deli paper are just a little bit less than 12 by 12. And I really like the look of this kind of like a patchwork approach with 3 or 4 different you see me there. I didn't want to do it off camera, so I just held it up to take prints from the stencils themselves. But as I was saying, I really like this patchwork look of using different small stencils on a large Gelli plate. I think it looks really great. It's a really nice way to get a variety of different patterns on one single piece of paper. That red tends to really take over. I always forget to go a little bit lighter on the red, and so then that's why I added yellow a couple of times there. Now these pieces of deli paper are getting really, really filled with paint. They're very, very layered at this point. Each one has at least 3 layers on it, and I'm really loving how they look. I just love how the Gelli plate looks too. I have to say I love that vignette. And yeah, I'm definitely going to want to do something that takes advantage of that vignetted look. So I'm going to do another one of these patchwork pieces. I quite like that. And with the stencils, you just have to press really hard, especially on some of the more concentrated stencils. So like that one that just has tiny little circles, you have to press really hard to get the deli paper to show through those holes, like to kind of push through the holes and pick up some paint from the Gelli plate. So now I'm just going to take some prints with the paint that was left over on the stencils, but it's pretty much dry, so I'm not getting much off of that. And now, because as I mentioned, those prints are all getting pretty filled up with color, I decided to do a white. I'm not going to fill my Gelli plate this time. I'm just going to take like little bits of white. See, I'm almost like stamping through the stencil. Well, not almost, that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm stamping through the stencil and just picking up little bits of white. And this one now, it has too much white on it, but that's okay, I can cover it up. And that's the thing with Gelli printing, is you never quite know exactly what you're going to get. And this dark piece really needs some more white, so I'm just going to kind of hand print there by mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. It seems pretty obvious that that's going to give me a hand-shaped print. But anyhow. I'm actually really liking one of my scrap pieces of paper, and I'm going to cut some leaf shapes out of that. Just that one of the scraps over there that I'm just rolling my brayer onto when I've got too much ink. And so I think what I'm doing now is I'm reprinting that one that had all that white on it just to give it another layer. So here comes that. I was going to be done, but then because I ended up with too much white on that last one, I just did one more layer of the yellows and reds. I like how that looks. That piece right there is probably one of my favorites, actually, even though it's like pretty see-through and it doesn't have much on it. And so I had forgotten about this green piece. I just completely forgot about it. It was over there drying, and so I just wanted to put a little something else on it. So you saw what I did. I just set it down. That wasn't a jelly print. I just brayered off some of the ink that was already on those stencils. Now I'm just going to put my stencils away. And because I do like to show the entire process, I'm going to show you the cleanup process, because a lot of people have asked me, I've had a few questions since I started posting some Gelli Plate videos. People have been asking me, is it really worth the cleanup? How messy is it? And so I thought I would just show you the cleanup process so that you have a sense of the time commitment involved in using a Gelli Plate. So this is my first baby wipe, and I'm just using it to get all of the dried up paint off of it, and that pretty much fills a baby wipe. And again, this is the larger size, so this is a clean baby wipe, so this is the second one, and this gets the rest of the color off of it. My third baby wipe, and by the third baby wipe, it's pretty much clean. It could be put away like this, but it's brand new, so I'm going to use a fourth baby wipe just because it's brand new, and I definitely don't want to get any like little bits of pieces of paint. And so I actually went and I washed my hands, because what I was finding is that the paint on my hands was coming off and leaving little bits of hardened paint on the Gelli Plate, and I just want the Gelli Plate to be completely clear and not have any bumps in it. So here's something that I learned. Don't bother doing what I'm doing right now. So I'm trying to get this Gelli Plate on there properly, and it's like, what happens is it sticks more to my palette than it does to the piece of acetate that comes with it. And so I had to try to get it perfect, but what I really should have done is just left it on not perfect, flipped it over, and then gotten the second piece on perfect, flipped it over again, took off the imperfect piece, and reset. Does that even make any sense? Anyhow, I will show that the next time I use my Gelli Plate, because I figured out that the way that I just did it was very inefficient. And the next time, I have just never used a large Gelli Plate like that, so it just took me that one time of doing it inefficiently to figure out a process. So I'll share it next time, because I don't think what I just said probably made any sense at all. So sorry about that. So now, I don't know if deli paper is going to work in my silhouette. So I'm just taking a plain piece of deli paper because I don't want to waste any of those pieces. I am changing the blade to 1. And I'm using, the settings that I'm using are, I kind of set it up for vinyl, because my experience is that vinyl is very thin. And so I thought that it would work. It worked a little bit. See these shapes? I just left this in so that you could see. And those are all the papers that I have below it. So I'm looking both at the scale in terms of, is this going to work? I'm not going to use the small ones because they're just too small, but I'm going to use the large ones and the medium-sized ones. Do not use a new cutting pad for deli paper, because the deli paper will probably never come off. This is a very, very old mat, and it's not very sticky. And so that will make this process a lot easier for you if you use an old mat. I couldn't imagine using a new mat because it was hard enough with an old one. So what I decided to do was, oh, there are my kitties. I'm going to run this through my silhouette, and I'm going to use a blade depth of 1, a speed of 3, and I have my thickness set on 9. And I wasn't sure if it was going to work because when you cut vinyl, the thickness is set to 10, and I just put it down one level because I felt like it was cutting a little bit too deep. I also changed my blade to a brand new blade so that the blade is very, very, very sharp. And sorry that my kitty is like very interested in my camera here. So that actually cut better, and I think it could be just that the acrylic paint that's over top of the deli paper just holds the paper together a little bit better, and so as the blade goes through it, it cuts better just because of the paint being on the deli paper. So that's something to keep in mind, is that painted deli paper seems to cut a little bit better than plain deli paper. So now I'm not going to leave this entire process in terms of me pulling off all of the shapes, but I just left a bit of it in to let you know that it's very, very handy to have one of those thin little spatulas. I have a Cricut spatula, but there's a silhouette version of the same tool that you can just slide your spatula in underneath of these shapes and just pull them off really, really carefully. And because I modified the shapes a little bit, these shapes come with little veins cut into them that I thought would be too finicky and make the shapes a little bit too delicate and not hold together. Like I thought they'd rip up and not work very well. So I modified these shapes, and when I did so, it didn't, like, I'm just not very good at doing that. And so the place where I erased part of it, like there's a couple of little gaps in my shapes, and so they're not quite cutting exactly perfectly. That's not the fault of the silhouette. It's the fault of me. It's a user error. So if you're going to modify shapes, just zoom in really, really close and spend the time to make sure that your lines are absolutely matching up. I usually, when I'm working with paper, I don't care if my lines match up. It's just my project. Because I don't give my shapes to other people, it's like just my own project, and it's not the end of the world if I have to use a pair of scissors to go in and cut. But you don't want to do that with deli paper because it's just, there's too many of these shapes and it's too delicate, and it's better if it just cuts a nice solid shape. So I promised you I wouldn't show you all of that, and sorry I blabbered through one of them, but I cut 3 complete pieces of deli paper with all of those shapes in it. And look at that, I just couldn't resist putting in this slow-mo. I wanted to know if these really were the same texture as leaves, like if they would fall like leaves fall, and look, they do. This is only from a few inches, and they fall really nicely just like leaves fall from a tree. So I think that I definitely achieved what I was trying to achieve, which was a nice leaf-like texture and consistency to these little deli paper leaves. Look at them, they're so cute. And I love how they curl up and you can see the back side of it because deli paper is just ever so translucent. The back side is just a whiter version of the front side, and it's so nice. This is a picture of the layout that I created with these leaves. I have lots and lots of leaves left over, so I will be doing another project with these leaves, and so you can check out my channel for that sometime in the next couple of weeks while fall is still here. I'm going to put some music on and you can look at the last photo. Take care and have a really great scrappy week.